begins to relate the pastime of Chitraketu. So Chitraketu was a pious king who did not have a son. He married 10 million wives, but they were all barren. And so we were in the section where Chitraketu is suffering from the anxiety of dying without having a son, and he's concerned about what will happen to the kingdom, who will offer the oblations to the forefathers. So at that time, Angira Rishi visits, and then he puts his he puts the cause of his. The Angira notices that Chitraketu is not happy, so he he puts the cause of his lamentation to Angira, and now and then Angira will respond. So we'll start from verse 17, which is essentially Angira inquiring from King Chitraketu. Angiro acha apite namayam swasti prakriti nam tatamataha yatha prakriti gupta puman raja cha saptabihi. The great sage Angira said, "My dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. When the 7 properties of material nature, the total material energy, the ego, and the 5 objects of sense gratification are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these 7 elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, a king is always protected by 7 elements: his instructor, Swami or Guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends." So Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he quotes Sridhar Swami's commentary on this verse, wherein Sridhar Swami talks about these 7 supporting elements for the king's well-being. And he says that if these 7 are not properly maintained, the king is happy. Similarly, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, Deyano Asmin Yatha Dehe, the living entity, the soul, is within the material covering of the Mahatattva, ego, and the Panchatana, Tanmatra, the 5 objects of sense gratification. When these 7 are in proper order, the living entity is in a mood of pleasure. Generally, when the associates of the king are quiet and obedient, the king can be happy. Therefore, the great sage Angira Rishi inquired about the king's personal health and good fortune of the 7 associates. So Angira Rishi gives the analogy of the key to material happiness. Right? So he says that the Mahatattva, right? Now, one might say that the Mahatattva dissolves into the material world. Right? That's the order of creation. That the Mahatattva is created, from that the elements get separated, and then essentially the Panchatanamatra and ego are there. But the Mahatattva is also used to represent the essence of the material creation. Like, it's like you have a milk, and then you kind of agitate the milk. You start getting different things, whey and some paneer and butter, etc., etc. So you can call them by the different names that are whey and paneer and other things, or you can also say that milk products. Right? So essentially, what it means, the Mahatattva is the various elements the Panch Mahabhutas, the five working senses, the five knowledge acquiring senses, and then the ego and the Pancha Tanmatra. So what it means is that when one is aligned with the recommended way to enjoy the material world, one is happy, right? Within the material context, one is living their lives piously, just like when the king has these seven aspects, there's these seven assistants to him, the minister kingdom, the instructor, etc. They're all aligned in helping the king is happy. So interesting to note how the sages, so we generally go the other way around, right? We use material examples to illustrate things that are more subtle. But the sages are so much situated in the subtle that they use the subtle examples to illustrate the material. So they're using the process of, Angira is using the process of the creation, the Visarga, to illustrate the factors that contribute to the happiness of a king. Okay. Verse 18. Atmanam prakriti silvadha nidhaya shreya apnuyad ragya tatha prakritiyo naradeva hitadaya. O king, O lord of humanity, when a king directly depends upon his associates and follows the instructions, he is happy. Similarly, when his associates offer their gifts and activities to the king and follow his orders, they are also happy. Right? So, Angira Rishi is talking about the fact that real happiness comes from reciprocation. Right? Now, the coin of the reciprocation may be different. Right? So, like for instance, between a parent and a child, the parent extends protection to the child, instructions to the child. The child reciprocates by offering obedience, surrender, and love to the parent, right? So there is reciprocation, but the coin may be different. So similarly, Angira is saying that when the king depends upon his associates, which means that he is open to taking counsel from the associates. Right? So this is the king showering his mercy on the associates. Right? Because when somebody says that I'm the prime minister, right, what does it mean? That I'm the main person that the king relies on. That is his point of glory. And so that's how the king glorifies his associates, by depending on them. And how do the associates reciprocate? By offering gifts and activities to the king and by following his orders. So in this way, there is mutual reciprocation and happiness. Verse 19. Apidar prajamatya Bhrityashrene hotata matranaha Porajan pada bhupa Atmaja vashavartinaha. O king, are your wives, citizens, secretaries and servants, and the merchants who sell spices and oil under your control? Are you in full control of ministers, the inhabitants of your palace, your provincial governors, your sons, and your other dependents? So Prabhupada in the purport writes that the master or king and his subordinate should be interdependent. Through cooperation, both of them can be happy. Right? So when the king depends on the others, as Angira stated in the previous verse, it does not mean that he becomes subordinate to them. Right? So the proper hierarchy is that the king always keeps them under his control. Similarly, we see in the relationship between guru and disciples. So a guru may be dependent on disciple for different things, right? So we see, especially during the later years of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes, his dependence on his disciple progressively increased to the point that even physically he had to be moved from one place to another by his disciples. His food was given by the disciple. So um, almost in all the aspects, he was depending on the disciple, but that does not mean that he became subordinate to them. Right? So actually, when a guru's dependence on the disciple increases, it should be understood that the guru's mercy on the disciple is increasing. And we see that in the pastime of uh, what's the name of the guru of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu?
Madhavendra Puri.
Madhavendra Puri. And and we see that when he became sick, and then he had two disciples, right? He had Ishwarapuri, and the other disciple's name was um,
Ramachandra Puri.
Ramachandra Puri. Thank you. Right, and when his dependence increased, then the mood of the two disciples changed. So Ishwarapuri, he looked upon it as the increasing mercy of the Guru. Right? So he was actually grateful to serve. Right? And Ramachandra Puri, he saw it as weakness of the Guru. He said that if my Guru is dependent on me, that means I am superior to my Guru. So he started instructing the Guru that you should be beyond the material platform, etc. So, and the difference was that by the mercy of his Guru, Ishwara Puri actually got Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a disciple, whereas Ramchandra Puri, he just went into this whole Vaishnav Ninda bhav. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada once made the statement that he was glorifying Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then he says with humility and conviction, he says that my Guru Maharaj could have made the entire world Krishna conscious, but very kindly he left some service for me. And so the fact that Srila Prabhupada was preaching to the West, which is something that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur desired. Prabhupada understood that the only reason he could preach in the West was because he had the mercy of his Guru. Like he was not thinking that my Guru Maharaj could not preach, but I preached, so I am superior. I'm superior to him. On the contrary, like he makes the statement that if Bhaktisiddhanta could have, if he had wanted, he could have made the entire world Krishna conscious, right? And in fact, he did. He did through the agency of Srila Prabhupada, and then Srila Prabhupada did through the agency of his disciples, right? So that's the mood that is being glorified by Angira Muni. Here it's more in a material perspective, but Prabhupada draws this parallel with the spiritual relationship, especially between Guru and disciple. Okay, verse 20. Yasyatmanuvashaschet syat sarve tadvasadai me lokah sapalayachanti sarvabalim atandratah. If the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and governmental officers are subordinate to him. His provincial governors present taxes on time without resistance. And what to speak of lesser events? So all this that Angira Muni was saying, that is your family members controlled by you, Is the government officers controlled by you? Are the governors paying the taxes? Are your servants serving you? Now he is presenting the key to it. That if the king's mind is fully controlled, right? So why? Because a person who is self-controlled can also control the others, right? In a mode of goodness, right? So the opposite is, if a person is not self-controlled, then they say that if you cannot even control your mind, then how can you control others? Like your mind is with you. It does not have dual ownership. If you cannot even control your mind, how can you control others? The flip side is, if you can control your mind, you should be in a position to control others. So now Angira is connecting the external with the internal. And Prabhupada says that actually this mind control is most essential for happiness. Yes, same point made by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, that the controlled mind is a friend and uncontrolled mind is the biggest enemy. Once Prabhupada Maharaj did a whole seminar on what is that book? Mana
Manasiksha.
Mana Shiksha, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's this whole seminar on how to control one's mind gradually, and the techniques to do it and advantages of doing it. Okay, verse 21. Atmana priya tenatma parata swata eva va lakshalapta kamam tvama chintaya sabalam mukham. O King Chitraketu, I can observe that your mind is not pleased. You seemed not to have achieved your desired goals. Is this because of you yourself, or has it been caused by others? Your pale face reflects your deep anxiety. So, commenting on this verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Angira Rishi speaks this when Chitraketu stays silent. So, to the statements that Angira has made in the previous verses about the control of the mind and are the seven factors cooperating, etc., Angira Muni did not respond. Right? So, I'm sorry, Chitraketu did not respond. So now Angira Muni, he says that it appears to me that you are not happy. Right? So Chakravarti Pad says that it is possible that the king says that, no, I am happy. It's another alternative. It's possible the king says that when Angira Muni says, these are the aspects for happiness, the king says, I'm happy. Or in the earlier part of the verse, Angira Muni says, I can observe that your mind is not pleased. And in response to that, the king says, no, I'm happy. So the sages says that Chintaya Shabalam Mukham, that your face is a reflection of your voice. So Srila Prabhupada says, exactly the purport of the next verse, but I put it here because it was more relevant, that since the face is the index to the mind, a saintly person can study the condition of one's mind by seeing his face. Right? Interesting that Prabhupada says that this is more or less something that is an empowerment of saintly people. That by seeing the mind, they can study, by seeing the face, they can understand the mind. And different ways to understand it. There there are some sages that can actually see a subtle body, and based on that, they can understand. There are some sages that are expert in what is known as the art of physiognomy. So physiognomy it's a more material science, but more relatively subtle, uh, in a sense that there are different aspects of one's body that reflects the state of one's mind. And interestingly, it is also, I was once reading upon it. So it's in the Western studies, it is known as micro expressions. And these more elite um, organizations like the CIA and the FBI, they actually offer a whole course on micro expressions, essentially to see when the person is telling the truth or hiding, or um, the apparently in Israel, it has been, for the Mossad, it's developed to a very high extent, where the trained agents, they can look at this very minute points. Like they give a example of an agent who was sitting in an airport. That's a Mossad agent sitting in an airport, and then by watching the eyes of the person, he could understand that this person is in some kind of conspiracy, because every once in a while the person was sitting still, but then his eyes would make contact with somebody sitting across the hall, and then that person's eyes were making contact with a third person. And because it was unusual, the agent understood that something is going on, and ultimately it turned out that they were actually planning to do some terrorist activity. So just by watching these micro expressions, actually, and there was a course that was not a course. I mean, just it was a class that was offered at my workplace. I was kind of interested in it. So then they were offering the class was free, but they were offering a course wherein one can do a full course on the study of these micro expressions, but um, very expensive. I think they were in the tens of thousands of dollars. This particular one was given by a FBI profiler there. So anyway, a bit of a diversion here. So back to the verse. So Angira, he's not he's not inquiring about the king's happiness now, right? So after making the factors that contribute to a person's happiness, specifically a king, the sage, he concludes that the king is not happy. Now, having ascertained that the king is not happy, the sage is trying to determine the cause. So in the cause, he gives two options. Right? He says, is this Atmika? So Atmika means that is this caused by yourself, or it is caused by others, right? So is it Daivik or Bhautik, which is external, or it is Atmik, which is internal. So there is a pastime of Sri Shor Gopal that we're all familiar with, and that Madhavendra Puri, he wanted to taste that Kshira of Gopinath, and he wanted to taste it so that he could replicate it and serve his deity the same Kshira. So an expert cook, by eating, they can derive the recipe. So recipe has two aspects, right? What is the ingredients? So it needs 1 spoon of this, 3 spoons of this, and then what is the process? First do this, then after that add 1 spoon of this, and etc. Similarly, an exalted devotee can divine the internal state by observing the external taste, right? So just by tasting, one can, expert cook can divine that what is the recipe and what is the process, what are the ingredients and what is the process. An exalted devotee, by observing the external state, can understand that what is the internal state and what is the cause of suffering. And that is what we see in Angira Muni at this point. Verse 23. Chitraketurvacha Bhagavan kim na viditam tapokya samadhivi yoginam vastapapanam bahiranta sharireshu. King Chitraketu said, O great Lord Angira, because of austerity, knowledge, and transcendental samadhi, you are free from all the reactions of sinful life. Therefore, as a perfect yogi, you can understand everything, external and internal, regarding embodied conditioned souls like us. So in the next three verses, 23, 24, 25, 26, four verses, Chitraketu will explain the cause of the anxiety. Right? So as is customary, when one is in the presence of an exalted personality, one should always begin by genuine glorification. Right? So Chitraketu, he addresses Angira as Bhagavan. Right? So not that he's Chitraketu is in Maya, thinks he's God, but Bhagavan also means uh, fortunate, right? So Bhagavan is Bhagyavan. Bhagavan is one who makes other fortunate. Bhagavan is one who holds good fortune. And of course, when Krishna is Bhagavan, then he holds the ultimate good fortune. But this title, Upadhi Bhagavan, is also used for exalted personalities. Right? So he immediately addresses Angira as exalted. And he also comments that you can understand everything external and internal, right? Now, maybe this is the question to you, that we see this exchange happening almost all the time. That even when the Lord appears and then he says, ask whatever you want, right? And then the person will more often than not say, oh my Lord, you already know everything. But since you have asked me, let me put my request. Even when sages come, they say, take a benediction. The person who's on the receiving end will very often say, like Chitraketu is saying, you know. So when he says you understand everything external and internal, he's saying, you know, externally, I have no sons, I have no children. And you know, internally, this is causing me a lot of anxiety. So you know both of it, right? And yet you are asking. So why do you think this interaction is always there? Right? Why doesn't the personality like Angira says, I know this is your problem and this may be, or why doesn't Krishna say, I know this is what you want and this is what you will get? Why do they always have this thing that ask and then they will respond to it?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. It's not an imposition, it's more like serving even though they're God or the superior, they're serving. And they come in the position as a servant, even they are great. That means they request and then they serve.
Out of humility. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
It's a receptive, as a teacher, we do see a need to be more kind of an interaction to identify what kind of reception a student can take. And
Yeah.
also, it will also assess from the assessment perspective
Yeah,
what the
yeah,
student's
yeah.
qualification.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a good answer. So it's for the benefit of the person, right? So Angira may know what Chitraketu wants, but Chitraketu may not know very well what he wants. So Angira might say, may you have a son, right? And Chitraketu might later say, I really didn't want a son. So it's not that Angira Muni is limited, it's that Chitraketu is limited. So like when Krishna comes to give a benediction, it's not that Krishna is limited. So Krishna is perfect, but the jiva is limited. And so Krishna comes to Dhruv Maharaj and says, this is what you will get. And then Dhruv Maharaj says that, not really. Maybe I wanted something else, which is kind of what happens actually in the interaction between Krishna and one of the few cases where the benediction was more or less offered unilaterally. But in almost all the cases, it is done for the benefit of the jiva. So when the jiva asks, or when the person asks, then the person takes ownership of the benediction. That this is what I need. Right. So when when Karna Muni was performing austerities, and when the Lord comes, then same thing. Karna Muni says, you know very well, right? And then he goes through this monologue kind of thing that I know what I'm asking is not the best. That I know I should not go into this dark well of marriage, etc. But I also know that I have desires that I need to fulfill, and that's why I'm shamelessly asking you for this benediction. So that conversation, that monologue itself was purifying to him. So that's why we will typically see very rare cases the benedictions are offered unilaterally when the recipient is a very exalted personality. Then then they're offered unilaterally. But we'll often see that the personality awarding the benediction will actually ask the other person, you ask me what you want, right? And then based on that, may or may not decide to give, right? The whole need and want, one's case. Okay. Let's move on to the next verse, 24. Tathapi prachato bruyam brahmanatmani chantitam bhavato vidushaschapi choditaspad anukaya. Oh great soul, you are aware of everything, yet you are asking me why I am full of anxiety. Therefore, in response to your order, let me disclose the cause. So Chitraketu is now more explicitly saying what he implicitly said earlier on. Right? He said, you know the internal and external. Now he's explicitly saying you're aware of everything, yet you're asking me. Right? And with graciousness, he's saying in response to your order. Right? So the point that he's making is that personalities like Angira, they are Sarvagya and Trikadrashya. So they know everything, and including the three aspects of time. Right? So the knowledge, it spreads both over space and time. So time means they know past, present, and future, and space they know that what's happening here, what's happening everywhere throughout the universe. So he's glorifying the position of Angira and saying that for whatever reason you're ordering me to give that, right? So not that you don't know what I want, A person like you knows very well I want. But because you have ordered me, I will disclose the cause. Right? So, why is Chitraketu revealing his inner sorrows to Angira? So think of it this way, that Chitraketu is the emperor. Right? Somebody comes to his house and then he begins to expose his vulnerabilities. So for people in power, vulnerabilities are jealously guarded because they could be the cause of the downfall. Right? So the kings, they would, and even in a material way, there were kings who used to be sick, but they would appear in public apparently healthy just to reassure people that no, we are not, there's no health issue. So similarly, we see that Chitraketu, he is very readily revealing his vulnerability to Angira, the cause of his inner sorrow. And the reason is that Chitraketu is not apprehensive that Angira may exploit or misunderstand him. If he had revealed this to an enemy, then the person would have leveraged it differently. They may have gone to the Praja and said, Chitraketu is completely demoralized because he can't have a son, not ready to rule, somebody else needs to rule, or they might torment Chitraketu. So there are many ways in which one's vulnerability can be exploited by the enemy. But the nature of the saintly person is that they naturally evoke trust in others. Why do they evoke trust? Because they themselves are detached. So Angira has nothing to gain by exploiting Chitraketu's vulnerability. He has no aspirations to get Chitraketu's kingdom or to have Chitraketu fall. He is fully detached. He has no ulterior motives. And he himself is of exemplary character. Right? So this whole process of revealing one's vulnerability in a safe environment is one of the biggest ways that one's problems are solved. Right? So solving problem does not mean that the solution to the problem appears. As we'll see in this way, solution doesn't really appear. But solving the problem means that the impact on the problem goes away. So in the Vaishnava interactions, this is the essence by which the Vaishnavas are able to stay alive in their spirituality. That they cultivate an environment wherein trust is there. Right. So I was once listening to this discussion. It was, I think, a podcast on Vaishnava Association. Of, the whole Dadati Pratiganati, the importance of Vaishnava Association, and Ramananda Roy, etc., saying association is most important. But it's also illuminating to see when the rubber hits the road in the life around us. Right? And many times the place where we go to get sustenance is also becomes the place where the most amount of suffering comes from. So a devotee goes to another devotee and says, I'm having problems getting up in the morning. And the person says, oh, you're so fallen. If you don't get up at Brahmura, you have no hope in your spiritual life. And let me tell you 12 quotes from Srila Prabhupada's that why getting up in the morning is important, and how Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, time for awaking for the materialist is time for sleeping for spiritualists, right? So what does that person walk away with? That the person is exposing their own vulnerability in the hopes of getting protection. Now the other person may not be able to give them the magic mantra that let me do this Om Namo Brahma Muhurta Uthaya, and then you start getting up in Brahma. That may not happen. But just the fact that the person is able to hear, sometimes they may be able to empathize, sometimes they may be able to sympathize, that itself gives enormous amount of protection. Right? And the opposite of it is that when the person in which you're confiding immediately becomes judgmental, and then the opposite of it happens. That if the problem was 5 on the scale of 1 to 10, it becomes 50 on the scale of 1 to 10. It's like where you went to get solace, like when a child goes to the mother for milk and the mother feeds the child poison. So it is similar to that. So Vaishnava interactions is not about stating philosophy, not about quoting verses. It is about understanding this underlying interaction that is playing. That we should feel safe to express our shortcomings and accept other people's shortcomings. There was maybe I'll just speak a few minutes about this. So if you have a line on a board, so there's the case where an instructor, he drew a line on the board, right, a horizontal line, and then he asked the students that there are 2 ways to shorten the line. So one student came in, he erased half the line, shortened, right? That's one way. Right? Then the person said, okay, what is the other way? And the other person came in and drew a longer line next to it. It did not change the original line, but drew a longer line. So this is the 2 ways when the association, when one is approaching for sustenance, but instead they get the opposite of that. Sometimes the person will directly criticize, saying that you're in Maya, Prabhu. You can't get up in the morning. You're obviously staying late up night. Obviously, your sleep is full of musty dreams or whatever, right? So this is essentially shortening the life by erasing. Or the person will say, oh, I know of this person who actually only sleeps 3 hours a day. Bhakti Vinod Thakur slept for only 1 hour a day. Srila Prabhupada barely slept. And I know of these wonderful devotees, and they sleep at 8 o'clock, they get up at 11, then they do this and this and that. So essentially drawing a longer line. And we are all being guilty of this sometime or the other. And we have also received it, we have also done it. So these seemingly mundane interchanges in the Bhagavatam are replete with lot of nuances. Because if you look at it, Sukadeva Goswami had only 7 days to speak to Parikshit Maharaj. So each and every word that he spoke was saturated with transcendental thoughts and meanings. Not so much for Parikshit Maharaj, but for us, right? So that's why the acharyas, they're able to endlessly churn each of these verses, the words between these verses. Like Vishnupad Chakravarti Thakur, he takes a verse and then he will expand it to a conversation with a lot of interpolation, just in order to churn the verse and extract more meaning. Okay. Next verse, 25. Lokapalerapi prathya samrajeshvarya sampada na nandyanti aprajam mama kshutrat kamam evapare. As a person aggrieved by hunger and thirst is not pleased by the external gratification of flower garlands or sandalwood pulp, I am not pleased with my empire, opulence, or possessions, which are desirable even for great demigods, because I have no son. So Srila Prabhupada uses a similar analogy to talk about the thirst of a soul. Right? So he talks about how if a fish is out of water, then you can give the fish so many things. You can give it halwa and puri and give it nice clothes to wear. Fish is not going to be satisfied. The only thing that will satisfy it is water. Right? The point is that the soul is only thirsting for connecting with Krishna. No amount of material possessions would satisfy it. In the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, Vasudeva, the father of Krishna, he is lamenting because he and Nand Maharaj cannot be together. And he says that many planks and sticks, unable to stay together, are carried away by the force of a river's waves. Similarly, although we are intimately related with friends and family members, we are unable to stay together because of our varied past deeds and the waves of time. Right? So in this verse, he uses the phrase Chitra Karmana. So Chitra Karmana means that the varieties of reactions to our past karma. So Chitra Karmana, for those of you who have done NOD, is another way of Prarabdha Karma. That at every given moment, a unique combination of our past karmic activity fructifies. And that gives us the Prarabdha Karma at that moment. And the next moment, another set of karma is fructifying, and that gives us the Prarabdha Karma at that very moment. Right? So, because of our past activities at every moment, there is a unique form of suffering and enjoyment that is being experienced by us. And because the karma is unique to us, the suffering and enjoyment is also unique to us. So Chitraketu is making this point over here, that I cannot be compared to others. Somebody may be happy by an empire. Somebody may be happy by the Aishwarya that I have. But I am suffering from a unique combination of my past karma, because of which I have no son. Now, there may be another king who has no son, but he's fine with it. He says, I don't care. Even nowadays, you see there are some couples that will consciously make this decision, no children. And there are others who will suffer endlessly to have a child. Same situation, but different ways, because the Prarabdha Karma is maturing different. So Chitraketu is saying my particular culmination of Prarabdha Karma is that all this that I'm having is not giving me any pleasure. But this thing that I'm not having, which is a son, is giving me great distress. Okay, we'll do a couple of more verses and stop for discussion. Verse 26. Tatapahi mahabhaga purve saha gatam tamaha yatha tarem dushparam prajaya tadvidehenaha. Therefore, O great sage, please save me and my forefathers who are descending to the darkness of hell, because I have no progeny. Kindly do something so that I may have a son to deliver us from hellish conditions. And so in the first chapter, Arjuna makes the same point, like that when there is no pinda. Interestingly, we are actually in the Pitra Paksha going on now, when it's customary to do pindan for departed ancestors. So Arjuna makes this point that when no pindan is done, then the ancestors will fall from their positions in Pitraloka. So Chitraketu, he is expanding the cause of his suffering, or rather, he is expanding the scope of his suffering. The cause is there that I don't have a child, right? But he's saying that I'm unhappy that I don't have a child, and my forefathers are unhappy because after I die, there will be no one to offer Pinder to me and my ancestors, right? And the Praja is unhappy because I'm not leaving them with a suitable heir to the throne. So Prabhupada writes that according to the Vedic civilization, one gets married simply to have a son who is needed to offer oblations to his forefathers. So the acts of a person have far-reaching consequences. So Chitraketu is saying that if I don't have a son, then look at the impact of it. My praja will suffer in the future. My ancestors will suffer, I will suffer. And the influence, the scope of influence increases with the position of the person. Right? So if it affects the king, it affects the millions of people who are dependent on him. If it affects a citizen, it will affect his immediate family. Right? So we see that when Diti got agitated, the entire universe was disturbed, right? For thousands and thousands of years. By that, because of the lust of Diti, Hirnaksha and Hiranyakashipu came, and they created so much disturbance. When Ajamel was influenced by the lust, he affected mostly himself, or at the most his immediate family, his wife and his parents. So very narrow scope of influence. And so Chitraketu is saying, because of who I am, this is not just going to affect me, but many, many others. Okay, so we'll pause over here. After this is the response of Chitraketu, of Angira here. So any discussions, comments? You have a few minutes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have two questions, Prabhuji. Thank you very much first for the beautiful class, Prabhuji. You gave the explanation about Vaishnava etiquette, and to me it appears like you pretty much emphasized on the empathy aspect of it. And you gave so what is the when as a devotees, when we need to create that environment, what is the principle behind it, Prabhuji? Like how do one, because trust you mentioned, but to build trust, there is some core foundation principle one should carry to build that atmosphere. What should be devotees keep in mind? What is that principle, Prabhuji? And you also explained the big line and small line while giving that example, like you mentioned about quoting the senior Vaishnavas who did wonderful activities in devotional service. And also what we are missing is another aspect. Both you said, both to me seems right. So uh, are you saying one is better over the other? I couldn't grasp that aspect, Prabhuji. If this is my first question.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Good questions, good observation. So I guess the first part of your question was that what can we do to build an environment that is nurturing around us? And essentially, what we give is what we get. Right? So when we start ourselves manifesting this quality of being trustworthy, then we will also develop and relationship of others that is based on them being trustworthy. Right? So if I come and share something with you, and then so same in the mood of receiving confidential exchange, next time when you come to me, then I will mirror that, or I'm more likely to mirror that quality, right? And that extends also. So one cannot expect that anytime anybody comes to me, I criticize the person, I belittle the person, or I go to 20 other person and says, oh, look at that person is doing this. But then when the shoe is on the other foot and I go and confide in somebody, I expect the person to be nurturing and sympathetic. That will not happen. Right. So like they say that, you develop the qualities that you want to see in the others, and then they will be attracted by those qualities. So you had asked about the thing about the long line, short line. Not so much whether it is right or wrong. I think what is important is the mood in which it is said, right? So if you go to your spiritual master and maybe the spiritual master may chastise you, but then the spiritual master may chastise you if he feels that this is going to help you make advancement. Right? You go to your Guru Maharaj and say, I cannot get up in the morning, and they'll say, don't be nonsensical, just get up in the morning, right? So the only time your Guru Maharaj will say that, because if he feels that chastisement might help you. Or he might say, what is the problem in you getting up in the morning? Look at devotee XYZ. He also gets up in the morning. ABC, he gets up in the morning, right? Again, he will do that if he feels that it inspires you. Right? Or the other way is that a person might come to you in the mood of condemning you, saying that you can't even get up in the morning. I'm really worried about your spiritual life. You're not able to control your senses. And I know this person, he is just 1 month into Krishna consciousness. He gets up at 1 a.m. every morning. You're still not able to get 1 a.m. So you walk away from the interaction feeling even worse about yourself. So in itself, it's not that one should always artificially glorify a person, or one should always artificially empathize with a person. But whatever one does, it should be done with this in mind, that will this help the other person in their spiritual life? That should be the main question that should be asked, right? And whatever the answer comes out of that, one should act accordingly. Sometimes it is good to chastise, right? That is what is needed. And sometimes it is good not to chastise. It is good to say, Prabhu, whatever you're doing, that's fine, right? There are times when people come to me and say that I just simply can't chant. And then I say, just chant one round, Prabhu. And there are others person who come and say that I'm not able to chant my 16 rounds properly. And then I say, get up in the morning and chant your 16 rounds. So different situations, different, depending on the level of advancement of the person, the relationship with the person, different instructions. But both times, the end goal is, will the person make advancements as a result of it? Okay.
I will wait for other devotees, Prabhuji. That's one question I will hold, Prabhu.
Okay. Okay. So we'll see if anybody else has any comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I think you have touched a very, very, very important subject, and this can destroy somebody's spiritual life or increase somebody's spiritual life. Unfortunately, there are more devotees that are destroying other people's life in a way because they are advancing too fast. They think they are advancing too fast, and they see everybody not advancing so fast. And then that's why sometimes they give, the PDS syndrome, pure devotee syndrome. That's one of the problem as well. I've seen it over the years. Many devotees, like, instead of encouraging people, they will, if they are very good in scriptures, they will try to push the people. If they want book distribution, they will pull them for book distribution. And everybody has their own inclination that we have to respect also. Anyway, I'm just giving a general comment. It's not a question as such, but I think you have touched a very, very, very important point.
Yeah,
I think we have to be daya, compassion toward other devotees.
yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so we are a little over time. You have a quick question, Ramkatha?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So you are mentioning about different people for the same circumstances may react differently because of the past prarabdha karma they brought into. So like so far my understanding prarabdha karma is something that gives us reactions, but still how we would react relates to more to with our free will. So, but is it also controlled by prarabdha karma or it is combination, Prabhuji?
So the effect of the prarabdha karma is not only to place us into situations where we are experiencing good and bad things, but it also determines how we experience those things. Right? So what is the effect? One of the effects of prarabdha karma, that it gives you a particular combination of the modes of material nature. If you have done pious activities, then you will be in the mode of goodness. What is the quality of mode of goodness? That there is detachment, there is happiness, there is illumination. So when a person in the mode of goodness is placed in an adversarial situation, then his reaction to it will be very different from a person in the mode of ignorance. Right? So what is the quality of the mode of ignorance? Like Prabhupada says, what does the word Shudra mean?
One
So,
who thinks for the
yes, the one who laments unnecessarily. Right? So the quality of mode of ignorance. Why is that person in the quality of mode of ignorance? Because of prarabdha karma, because of the activities that he did, right? So it controls both ways. It controls what we experience, and it also controls how we experience.
Oh, very true, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you very much. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णवृंद की जय, शीला प्रभुपाद की जय, थाई गौर प्रेमानंद। हरे Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.